Start. Hello, friends. Welcome to another podcast of AJ Podcast. So we are thrilled to have Nicu Parente, a senior product manager, who is joining us our podcast today. With over 8 years of experience in the tech industry, Nisu has worked in different roles such as software engineer, operation analyst, and product manager, specializing in platform and infrastructure running at planetary scale. His impressive portfolio includes automating Azure build-out infrastructure, ensuring the best Windows notification experience for over 1 billion devices. That's pretty impressive. And mostly recently, accelerating Salesforce customer integration solution. Nisu brings him leadership experience from his military, where he co-trained and managed soldiers in her duties and responsibility. He is enough passionate about the empowering and inspiring people to build products that positively impact the world. Through his work in tech, Nisu has a wealth of knowledge to share us with today, especially navigating career transition and product management. So, hi Nishu, welcome to AJ Podcast.
Hey man, happy to be here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, so Nishu, tell me something about your journey, how you can transition from software engineer to a product manager.
Yeah, so I started my transition so I was a software engineer for about 2.5 years. And one of the things that kind of led me up into product has been working on a project before that, or a feature, right? That worked on it a couple months, and when I launched, it didn't really make as much impact as I wanted it to, as I expected it to be, and that kind of led me up into the wondering like why, right? And figuring out like who or what ended up to what led up to choosing that feature, and asking who kind of leads that portion of things, and that's where I got exposed to product management. So product management to me was exposed organically, and it really interested me, right? Because I know later on in my career I do want to start my own business and all that stuff. And what made me realize was that it's not enough to just build something, but you also want to know what to build, why to build it, and when to do it, and all that, the 5 W's, right? So that kind of falls more in line to the product management side. So I took that up, and been a product manager for over 3 years, and I really enjoy it. Like being able to collaborate on different folks on it. In terms of my transition, I did take up a course through the University of Washington for product management, from its continuing education center. So there I transitioned. After that, I transitioned internally within Microsoft, working on internal tooling initially as part of Azure. And after that, I transitioned into a more customer facing role or externally facing role in Windows. So that's when I worked on notifications, which is,
Yeah.
I would consider one of my first product role experiences that's externally facing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So right now you are a senior product manager or a product manager only, or is a
I'm
associate product?
yeah, I'm a senior product manager right now at Salesforce.
Yeah, sure. So great. So so as a senior product manager, what do you think are that's a most important skill set for someone in this role? Could you
Yeah,
put
that's a
up
good
the light on
question.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a senior product management position, it's definitely a lot more on the vision and strategy. And in my point of view, I think on the as an associate product manager or product manager, I think on the more junior role, it's really dealing with ambiguity. But as soon as you really come into senior product management, you really have a lot more ownership in the strategy and
Yeah.
the vision of the product, right? So I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
skills that you have to build out, defining that clarity and vision to whatever product you want to do, especially in like 5 years out, 3 years out, um,
Yeah.
and giving that
That's great.
guidance, right? So.
Yeah, that's pretty great. So, matlab, the thing is ki how you positively impacted the world through your world in tech, just like that ki as your previous experience in which window notification experience for over 1 billion devices. That's a pretty impressive. So, how you matlab, what could you share some examples like that? Yeah, you
Yeah,
positively impacted the world through the world. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in tech in general, I do try to
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
paint it in a very
yeah,
positive light, right? Like even when I was working at
yeah,
Expedia,
yeah.
helping folks go have their travel experiences, or in
Yes,
even if it's work on Azure, even though I'm working on the backend infrastructure or the data centers and all those build outs, people build on top of those products, right? Like a lot of customers use Azure at that time to run really critical mission infrastructure, right? So, for
yes,
example,
correct, correct.
if a government is using it to handle their emergency hotlines, right, or their emergency systems, to me, that's a positive thing that we can do to where we can
Yeah,
empower them to really deliver value and really help save a life. Really, it is the way I see things on that. Building the
yes,
platform that they don't have to worry about by managing the infrastructure, not having to worry about those things, and just really focusing on delivering value. Is how I really painted in my head when it comes to working on tech products. So yeah.
yeah, great. So, as you told that as you become the senior product manager, okay.
Mhm.
So, what is your approach towards the developing and executing the product strategies that are aligned with the company vision and goal? If you give me an example of Microsoft or Salesforce, then it seems to be good to the audience as well as.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's a lot of combination. And
Yeah,
as a product manager, you got to synthesize those things. You have your business objectives. You also have to look at what the customers want, and also what
yeah,
the market is looking like, right?
yeah,
Um, Oftentimes during planning cycles, you do have long-term strategy for the business. So they come up with like, okay, this is what we want to see it 3 to 5
yeah,
years. You try to figure out what how your product can align to that. But at the same time, you also want to surface up things from what
yeah,
you're seeing from the product line, right? Like sometimes there might be some things that are not super aligned to the business, but you got
yeah,
to think about it strategically, right? So,
yeah.
and really, just doing a lot of trade-offs and priorities, and really evaluating it from both positions, right? You can't just take it from top down. We also got to make it from bottoms up and just kind of meet them in the middle is how I've seen things. And I think with vision and strategy, vision you don't really, or I shouldn't say we don't really, but vision doesn't really have a lot of the implementation pieces as how I
Mhm.
see it. So I think in any companies that I worked in, within Salesforce, we have V2 Moms. In Microsoft, we had OKRs at that time, and I think it was Expedia. We had like
Yeah,
bad, we had priorities at that time, but I don't know what framework we used. But they set out these goals. Some of them have majority of them actually have like numbers to track against, right? So if whatever it is that you're building, if it's driving a needle, which is like a number that you're trying to trend up or trying to meet a business goal, you align whatever I guess work you want to do, a strategy you want to do to move those needles, right? And that's that you can do that by really just taking all the information available for you, market customers, as I was saying, and then also just what the product strategy is, or the other programs available for there to build to drive those business goals. So
oh, great. So, matlab for the initial, because as I see a movie, Steve Jobs, okay, so always Steve Jobs fires someone who is not aligned to the company vision as well as the product
yeah.
vision. So, yeah, so I am so much passionate towards that. How this guy is so much passionate towards the vision. You always refer to the, yeah, I am firing this person because
Yeah.
he's not aligned to the company's vision and the product vision. Okay, so how what do you think about this, yaar? Kya, how much implementation is this done? Because you work on farm companies as well as a Salesforce is also a market leader in the SaaS industry. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, your job as a product manager is to really align, right, with what that company vision is to your product vision, right? I
Yeah,
think the company
yeah,
vision as a whole is pretty broad,
yeah,
and whatever vision you have at your product level should be aligned to that. And
yeah,
you can't expect, at least especially in bigger tech companies, right? You can't expect every single CEO to know each product. I mean, there's a lot of product lines they would have to know. They would have
yeah,
the top level
yeah,
piece of it, but really, if you can tie in on how your product vision is aligned to the overall company's vision, if it's like, I don't know, delivering the scale, delivering infrastructure at planetary scale, right? Like, okay, how does my product align to that? Is it the build out or whatever?
Yeah.
If you're able to tie into those two things, that's how I would consider it. Now, I've
Yeah.
in terms of like folks firing in vision, I think there's some misalignment on that case, but I think that's more of I would say a more extreme example in terms of misalignment on vision. So
Yeah. So vision is matters the most, if I'm right.
yeah. Yeah.
So my another thing is कि यार मतलब because as you are from a military background or some military background, then how your journey goes on? Could you redefine your journey? Because that's a question I need to put up in the initial. But yeah, sorry for that. And
Yeah, no worries.
yeah,
Yeah, so from the military, right? I was an enlisted infantryman. So I wasn't really
yeah,
on I came in from the enlisted side, so there's two branches. There's two sides in the military, there's the officer side and enlisted side. So I come from enlisted, I was an infantryman. I got
yeah,
out in 2014 active duty, from active duty, and then joined the tech industry with starting off in operations, which, I think was a really good fit to me because in the military they teach us a lot of, dealing with change and just dealing with ambiguity.
yeah,
Operations kind of, it was a good fit for me on that because it's heavy on
yeah,
execution too. So
yeah,
um in terms of like what kind of helped me out, I guess from the military, I think it was really dealing with ambiguity and prioritization.
yeah,
Accountability and communication has been, I think, although there, some folks who consider it soft skills, were pretty critical
yeah.
in my transition into tech. Because oftentimes things change.
Yes,
so so you have to be able to roll with it. You could have, a change in business priority, or you could change an entire org for a team, right? Like what happens if, this team your engineering team leaves, or your engineering
yeah,
manager leaves, right? So you got to be able to
right.
deal with those changes. So I think that's kind of what helped
Yeah.
me from the military coming into the tech industry.
Yeah. So my question is here, कि, for example, you are at a military. I need to know about how the US military is also like because, for example, in the US military, every time, because in Indian military, na, so the military ends as well as the army man is serving so much, and they need to run about 4 to 5 kilometers per day. Is it a true? It is also happen in the US military, right?
Oh yeah. I mean we run definitely on a weekly basis, and we also do rucks. So ruck marches, you put in, a couple heavy backpack, right, and you just
Yeah.
walk for miles upon miles, right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely do a lot of physical exercise in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, it can vary from doing some kind of cardiovascular thing
Mm,
like running or doing the ruck marches to,
mm,
just doing push-ups, dips, pull-ups, climbing ladders,
yeah.
whatever it is. But there's usually something each morning.
Oh,
So.
great. So you also did the same till
Yeah, for
2014
sure.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my another thing I need to know. So, uh, for example, what the approach you are using, for example, as you already in the, matlab, what advice you would give to looking to a transition people that are transition the tech industry, particularly in the product management role?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think one, you really got to figure out why you want to transition first in the tech industry. A lot of times,
Yeah.
folks just are want to change careers just to change careers, but I always try to be transparent to folks that the tech industry the transition is pretty hard. The journey to transition into tech is actually pretty hard. And challenging, right? So you got to be ready to, to go
Yeah.
get through that process, not just like the training alone, but also just the job search, right? So
Right.
my advice is, one, figure out your why. Two, narrowing down the discipline you want to focus on. Not everybody in tech just codes, so you got to figure out what discipline you want to do. Do you want to do design? Do you want to do product management, or do you want to do software engineering, data science, um, tech sales? there's a lot of different roles out there. Just figure out what it is, because saying like, hey, I just want to transition to the tech industry is pretty broad. Third, I would say, um, figure out what kind of training and experience you need to get in order to land your first job. So, say for example, for software engineering, there's multiple ways to really get it. One, you can go to college, you can teach yourself, or you can go to a coding boot camp, or you can apply to an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship program has been, I think apprenticeship programs have been trending up now, to where it's even international, right? Where they
Yeah.
teach you and then also pay you, which is amazing, in my
Yeah.
opinion, because you can get best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And after you get the training and experience, fourth thing you figure out is, okay,
Yeah.
now, well, I shouldn't say not you should actually be doing this while getting the training, right? Is you should find
Yeah.
communities and maybe even a mentor to help you within the journey. I think it's really critical to find communities to just, cheer you on, but also at the same time give you feedback on what you're doing, right? I think it's really critical, and I've been part of a couple, either through the military ones or just folks transitioning into tech, right? And
Yeah.
lastly, I would probably say, you know, make sure you build in public. I know for for folks that are doing software engineering, they usually create projects, portfolio pieces, check it in on GitHub. But I think that's that. Don't get me wrong, that's really great. But I think at the
Yeah.
same time, you also have to, I guess, do the marketing game, and really showing your work in public, right? So either that's on LinkedIn or Twitter. You build a
Yeah.
process so folks can actually see what you're doing, so they can have you can get some eyes right on your portfolio, so recruiters and all of them can get interested. So I highly recommend building in public and also networking out on there.
Yeah.
Specifically for product, I would say that if you're uh looking to get into product, it's a catch
Yeah.
22. I tell everybody this, like, it's meaning like it's you know we want to be a product manager, you have to have some product management experience for all these postings, which, I understand is kind of hard to do, especially if you don't have your
Yes. Correct. Correct.
uh product management role out there. So I think there's other ways to do this, or at least to break into your first product role. First one is through an associate product management program, so APM roles.
Yeah.
Another one's apprenticeship that I was mentioning before. Third one is
Yeah.
really getting into starting your own business or creating your own product, really, to to bridge that gap on the product experience.
Yeah.
And then fourth would be joining a company on a product adjacent role. Product adjacent could be, program manager, um, customer success. It could be
Yeah.
software engineer if that's your thing, right? Like something that's
Yes.
interfacing with the product manager, and then transition into product management after
Then it
breaking
is
into this.
easy.
A little
Yeah.
bit easier, right? Because then you can
Little
actually
bit
network,
easier
and
because the
and then you
internal
have,
transition is easy. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So I
Nishu, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Then
I
I will
think the
conclude.
last one I would just say, like, like you can definitely apply to
Yeah.
multiple jobs too. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But I would say like the ones that have higher chances is really a
Yeah.
combination of multiple things there. So
Yeah.
if you can take advantage of most of them, then do that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I would like to ask, as you told that yeah, learning in public is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So so I think so that is the most important thing that the people are needed for the
Yeah.
transition and any type of role. Because if you are not able, because today job market is all about how much skill and required qualification you have. So learning
Yeah.
in public, I think so, is the best key tool for the product managers as well as. So Nishu, I think so. If you can put up a enough light on that, and as well as is this a not right time, so we will move it and discuss on something else. But please do a one. I would like to request you, please do a session on this learning in public. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
For
is
sure.
needed because
Yeah.
there's a nothing is available for the product manager for learning in public life things.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why. So uh what I like to ask, yeah, so there's a stakeholder management that is the most
Yeah.
important key aspect uh for the product managers. And I see the so many CVs from farm companies as well as in your profile as well. So that is mentioned in a that is a so much prioritizing, huh? So
Yeah.
and the customer need and the how we and the customer need, okay.
Yeah.
So how we can manage and balance both of the things at the same point of time while developing and launching the products.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think
Yeah,
it's even harder for products that are are
yeah,
cloud based or services that are are always up. And stakeholder management is one of the, as you were mentioning, is one of the primary responsibilities of the product manager. And your stakeholders could be, your leadership, but also the different partnerships that you have out there.
yeah,
Um, and aside from leadership and your partner teams, so you're going to be CSM support or
yeah,
other program managers that are trying to launch a specific company wide program. Um, you also have your customers, and also right your product
yeah,
itself. Like if your product could be in a in a state to where you might have to start paying off tech debt, for example.
yeah,
So you have to balance those things out. um the way I've approached these things has been, one, just over communicating as much as I can, to where we were at. Here's the current, in terms of stakeholder management, just like we're just giving visibility, right? Because that's
yeah.
basically what they want to know, like where we're
Correct,
at.
correct.
And the other one, aside from visibility, is really just prioritizing and making sure that people are aware of why you're doing the thing, right? Like I sometimes get different asks from different folks, from different
Yeah,
stakeholders, and I always
yes,
tell them like, hey, I got it. That's really important, and I'm not saying it's not important. Just there's just
yeah,
something more prioritized above that, right? And you show
correct,
them like,
correct,
okay, this
correct,
is what we have on our plate,
correct,
and some of them have very specific deadlines and commitments that we have to meet, and we have to just let you know like we can put that in our backlog or not, right? If it does make sense to our product or not, and go from there. Because oftentimes, there are a lot of competing priorities. That's just the
yes,
reality of any product. Like everybody has their own, uh, their own agenda and own priority, regardless of like
yeah.
which stakeholder it is. You just got to figure out like what works for your product the best, right? So yeah.
So any framework that you always use for prioritization of the needs and as well as the features, so please let us know because we all guys
Yeah.
are stay hungry and stay foolish, so that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've used a couple frameworks, but I think I've kind of made my own, to be honest. I think it's really based on folks on how they want to drive. To me, I personally look at the business priorities, impact, and there anything like how is it how painful is it? For example, when handling tech debt, for example, I'm like, okay, this is painful 1 hour each week compared to
Yeah,
like if we invest, two developers to fix this tech debt
yeah,
compared to launching this new product or this new feature that could bring in the company $5 million,
yeah,
right? Like those kind of things you just gotta have in paper and like what the impact is. And that's how I've simplified it to that. Like, okay, what's the impact if I do solve this? What's the effort required to do it, and just go from there. I know Moscow is also another a good prioritization tool that if you don't have one that you can point
uh,
at, you could do that.
Moscow, Moscow.
Moscow, yeah.
So would you give a small light on that, if possible, for you?
So yeah, I haven't used it in a bit, but it's a Moscow prioritization. Let's see here. I remember so it's like must have, should have, could have, and will not have is another way to
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
is another way to really look at things in prioritization. I use this on features more than I guess strategy wise, because most of the time everything's like a must have on a very strategy level, and it's more of like, okay,
yeah,
how can I have the line there?
yeah,
It kind of comes down
yeah,
to capacity on engineering. So
yeah. So, matlab, this is only a one hack that you are using for
yep.
the from couple of years from 20 matlab, great. So matlab, how you can think for the matlab, for example, as you told that that the future Okay, so how you think the future of tech and product management, as well as the how can aspiring product managers matlab, align them towards the future and how they are preparing for that. Okay, you get my
Yeah,
did you
great
get
question.
my
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I
yeah
think on the product management side, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of newer frameworks, so that I foresee us like adopting. I mean,
yeah
it's not like we're gonna be learning a new language or framework compared to like on the engineering side. Like on the engineering side, there's usually some new technologies out there that you have to adopt in. I think the core skills on product management isn't going to change as much. What I would say though is for product managers, we have to be a lot more uh, uh intuitive, but I would pay attention on a lot of the trends, specifically, like coming into right now, like AI being remote, being
yes correct
globally available, like the different trends within industries, or not industries, even like in countries, right? Like, okay, data governance, those things you got to pay attention to because that does shape or impact your product, right? Like AI, for example, or a new governance
yeah
that EU put in. Like
yeah
if they have something that they just brought up, like the GDPR or DORA, for example, you have to figure out, okay, how does that fit into my product, right? Like how can we
yeah
prepare for that? Because if we don't do that, then we can't do something. We
yeah
can't address that market, right? So keeping up with the current market trends, news, and those kind of developments is you have to do that each
needed
day. Yeah,
yes
really. And this okay, it's this competition, or especially if there's competition out there, right? Like they just launched this. Okay, what can we do on our side to address
correct
that? I think
mm,
you know, AI is not going to be moving. It's not going to go away anytime soon. It's probably going to ramp up even further. I think a lot of companies right now are ramping up to it. Um, but just figuring out. I think another one it'll be fairly big is actually sustainability and how that kind of impacts into to
yeah
different products. I know I've seen a trend within a lot of the consumer and also B2B products coming in now to where it's actually showing in the impacts, right, of whatever product it is that's out there. Like for example, Google Travel shows like how much
yeah
carbon is used for this flights and all that stuff. So
yeah
now I would definitely do that. And I think the best way to do this is signing up for newsletters, specific product leaders, and then market newsletters. Uh, I subscribe to a couple, and then also Twitter. Tech Twitter
Yeah,
is
so
definitely
please give me a list of that I will put up into the description so that the people can
yeah, will do.
take advantage of whatever you are enjoying and whatever from where you are learning. So, Nishu, I have another question. One not about the question, so it's more about like I have a one curiosity. For example, I am a product manager, not a product.
Mhm.
I am associate product manager. Okay, I get a job as an associate product manager. Okay, but I now get an opportunity to build some ML feature, okay, on our product. So how
Mhm.
I should convince my other stakeholders as well as my senior stakeholders, my manager. So first I need to get a clarity so that I get an approval because
Yeah.
associate guys are don't have that much accessibility are yeah you guys come here and you can build this does not happen na, with associate guys, so that's why I'm asking for
Yeah, I mean, so just to make sure I clarify your question there, you're basically asking, hey, I want to, I want to integrate AI ML on this current product. How can I get my stakeholders
yeah
to
yeah
buy
yeah
into that?
Matlab, I
Right.
have a idea as well as and I know how to do that and how to create a model because as you and me are from the engineering background, okay, so we know how these models are running. For example, I am working for an as a product manager at Uber, okay, but I think so in the chatbot or as a chat there we need to input an AI. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, machine learning. For example, the data that is coming. So how I can explain the why and what is needed to explain to other stakeholders. So
Yeah.
could you
Yeah. I mean,
could you get
I,
what I need to ask? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would first definitely take a step back to make sure that, like, is MLAI really the solution to
Yeah.
this, that what you're trying first you got
Yes.
to define out really the problem there, right? Like ML and
Yeah.
AI, that's a good call out too, because it's coming from engineering backgrounds. We do get into the implementation details really
Yeah.
quick, and it's pretty exciting, right?
Yes.
You're like, oh yeah,
Correct.
I want to
Correct.
do
Correct.
this
Yeah.
because we want to do this because it's
Yeah.
it's
I
great.
need to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. um and one really framing the problem is one, like, is it an actual, is it a problem that's applicable to
Mhm.
us? Are we the right team, or are we the right product to solve this, right?
Yes.
So just defining out the problem space and really have a good definition on it, because that's where your stakeholders are going to ask you really a lot of things, right? Like, why are we doing this,
Yeah.
right? Why should we do
Yeah.
this, right? Before
Yeah.
you even, because with anything with AI ML related, there's a lot of, one, expertise you got to hire in. Two, there's a lot
Yeah.
of governance to that, right? Like, okay, what's the
Yes.
data
Yes.
sets that we're handling and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
one, you got to make sure the use case makes sense, and that you have the problem defined. And then after that, like, you start really defining out, like, what, going back right to earlier, you asked me, like, how do you do the vision and goals and like that? Start aligning to those. Like, okay, if we implement this, right? If we implement this feature, we will be able to drive the specific business goals or the specific vision, right? Like, tying
Okay.
those two things in will help out. Help your at least leadership understand, because they're
Yeah.
looking at very strategic investments,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So being able to tie that in is going to be great.
Yeah.
So creating a good story about that will be amazing, and really coming up with data, in order to data that's applicable to the right audience, um, could help. Like, for example, if you want to integrate in AI or AI support within your product, right? And you talk to your support team, right? Like, and they're usually big stakeholders as well. They'd be like, hey, if we integrate this AI chat bot, right, to this whatever product we have, it could lower your cases by X amount of percentage, right? Or if you talk to um, on a different stakeholder that's for let's just say business folks, you talk to them like, hey, this is going to drive, you know X amount of millions, right, or thousands of dollars
Yeah.
in revenue
Yeah.
if we introduce this as a
Yeah.
new feature, right? Like, same
Yeah.
feature, but for different
Yeah.
stakeholders you communicate in a different way, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how you get buy-ins for it. But I would say the very first thing you got to do is define out the problem space and make sure that you understand the use cases on why you want to integrate. Because building something just to build it is great. It's not what I should say is great, but you're kind of doing a solution to problem fit instead of a problem to solution fit. So
Right. 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 So I have a last but not the least curiosity because uh how has your experience in the military shaped your approach to leadership and management in the tech industry? So it's more about like wow factor, how the wow factor coming into your leadership because you molded from you are a clay and come into the military, then how that can enhance your capabilities toward the leadership. So yeah.
yeah, I think one of the big experiences in the military that kind of taught me out is that, even on a very junior enlisted level, everybody's taught leadership and
Yeah.
accountability, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think at one of the biggest things you got to do as a leader is be accountable. So if the
Yeah.
mission fails, or whatever mission or
Yeah.
product or whatever it is fails, right? You have to
Yeah.
be able to say, oh yeah, you know we
Yeah.
I did that, right? Or like our team did it, or I did that, like I missed something here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And being able to take that accountability, and learning from it and changing and moving forward has been probably one
Yeah.
of the biggest pieces. Another
Yeah.
one is probably being able to make decisions. I
Yeah.
think one of the big issues, or big challenges I should say, as especially on a junior product manager, is that you can get into a analysis paralysis to where you can't make a decision because you're worried that you might make the wrong decision, right? Like, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
is it this? I got four options of implementation here. Like, okay,
Yeah.
which one do I
Yeah.
choose? And you're like, oh
Yeah.
crap, I'm not sure. So then, instead of like making the decision, you just push it off, push it off, push it off, right?
Yeah.
One thing in the military that taught me is like, you got to make decisions, and sometimes if it's the wrong decision, you have to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, if you made a decision and it was wrong, great, you made the best decision as much as you can on the information that you have. What can you do
Yeah.
to what's the next decision that you
Yeah.
can fix that or improve your situation. Because you don't want to be in a place where you're just waiting, not doing anything. That's what's that's not, and that's really not good, right? Like, because as a product managers, even if you're an associate product manager,
Mm,
you're in a leadership position, especially working
yeah,
with your dev with your dev team. Your dev team is looking for your um guidance, right, on where you
yeah,
should be going, right? And you need to be able to
yeah,
make those decisions and take ownership and accountability on it if
yeah,
it doesn't go on, whatever, right? So
yeah,
those are probably the two biggest pieces that I would say help me shape my
yeah,
product career in the tech industry. So
yeah. So great. Nishu, it's my first time that I'm so much excited to take a podcast and so much enjoy the conversation
oh
with the guest. So it's more not about like it's a podcast, it's more about like conversational way. So so Nishu, you are really, really good guy. And as well as you are so much enough to give the cons tell the things in a very good and in a very funny way, as well as the smile and the how you explain na, that's so much great. So last but not the least, I'm saying only a few words to you. It was an absolute pleasure to you have in this podcast today, sharing your insight and experience in the tech industry. We hope that your journey and advice has been informative and inspiring for our listener, so especially those who are looking to transition into a career in the product management.
thank
So,
you.
Nishu, thank you again. And I think so. I expect only a one thing, that learning in public. So, if you can come up with me in the next or whenever, if possible. So, in the coming of couple of weeks, as well as coming of couple of days, as well as couple of months. So, please let me know. We will do in that. That is the most important thing. And thank you so much for
No
coming.
problem. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me in the podcast. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Thanks for the insightful questions. So
yeah, yeah. Thanks. Bye.